Hello, little one. Today I'll tell you a magical story from the Sky Kingdom, the story of the Green Fairy and the Purple Fairy. It's a tale about kindness, hard work, and how even small efforts can make the world bloom. Are you ready? Let's begin. Once upon a time, high above the clouds, there was a shining palace called the Sky Kingdom. It was ruled by the Sky King who watched over the world below. He was wise and kind, but he also believed that every fairy in his court must learn the value of hard work and kindness. Among the many fairies in the Sky Kingdom, two were especially well known. One wore a dress the color of spring leaves, and everyone called her the Green Fairy. She was gentle and diligent, always caring for the flowers in the sky gardens. Whenever a blossom drooped, she watered it. When weeds grew, she patiently pulled them out. The other fairies admired her for her loving heart. The second fairy wore a shining violet dress, and she was called the Purple Fairy. She was beautiful and graceful, but unlike her companion, she disliked hard work. She often sighed whenever she was asked to help in the gardens, and preferred to spend her time admiring herself in the crystal ponds. One golden morning, the Sky King gathered all the fairies in the great hall. His voice was deep and powerful as he spoke. Far below, there are islands left wild and empty. I wish to see if they can be turned into places of beauty and life. Green Fairy and Purple Fairy, I give this task to you. Each of you will go to a deserted island. In 1 year's time, I will return to see what you have done. The fairies whispered among themselves, Green Fairy is so hardworking, her island will surely bloom. But Purple Fairy is clever, maybe she will surprise us. Green Fairy bowed gracefully. Her heart was full of determination. I will do my best. I will make the island bloom with flowers. Purple Fairy's eyes sparkled at first. If I can make my island more beautiful than hers, everyone will finally admire me. But then she frowned a little. A whole year of work? That sounds exhausting. The Sky King looked at both and reminded them, this challenge is not only about the islands, it is about what you will become. With a wave of his hand, 2 golden clouds appeared, carrying the fairies gently away. The music of the heavens followed them as they began their journey to the world below. The 2 golden clouds carried the fairies down from the Sky Kingdom. The wind was soft, and the sunlight sparkled like diamonds on the ocean waves below. For the fairies, this was the very first time they had left the palace of the skies. Green Fairy leaned forward, her eyes wide with wonder. Look at the sea. It's endless and beautiful, she whispered to herself. She felt both nervous and excited. Purple Fairy, on the other hand, sighed loudly. It's so far and so windy. I hope my hair doesn't get messy. She crossed her arms and pouted, not caring to look at the view. At last, the clouds split, each drifting toward a different deserted island. Green Fairy landed on an island filled with wild flowers. The blossoms were small but bright, dancing in the breeze. Birds flew overhead, and butterflies fluttered around her. She clapped her hands in joy. This island is alive. With care and patience, I can make it bloom into a paradise. Purple Fairy landed on another island. It too had wild plants, but she only saw them as weeds. The soil looked rough, and thorny bushes stretched across the sand. She wrinkled her nose. This place is dreadful. How could anyone make it beautiful? The Sky King must be joking. The fairies had 1 year. The challenge had begun. On her island, Green Fairy wasted no time. The moment she arrived, she began to explore. She touched the leaves, smelled the wildflowers, and even dipped her toes into the cool stream that trickled down from the hills. "This land has everything it needs," she said happily. "Water, soil, and sunlight. All it needs now is care." She gathered sticks to build a small shelter. Birds chirped around her as if cheering her on. A little rabbit peeked out from the bushes, curious about the new visitor. Green Fairy smiled and offered it a flower. Soon, more animals came closer: a pair of squirrels, a bright bluebird, and even a shy turtle. They seemed to sense her kindness and followed her wherever she went. "This is perfect," she said. "If I work hard, maybe these little friends will help me too." Meanwhile, on the other island, Purple Fairy was not as pleased. She sat on a rock, arms crossed, frowning at the thorny plants around her. "Ugh, it's too hot. The ground is rough, and there are bugs everywhere. I can't possibly live like this," she groaned. Instead of exploring, she found a cave and decided to rest inside. "I'll figure it out tomorrow," she muttered, curling up in the shade. But tomorrow came, and she was still too lazy to start. "Maybe next week," she yawned. While Green Fairy worked joyfully each day, planting seeds and watering flowers, Purple Fairy spent her time sleeping and complaining. The difference between the two islands had already begun to grow. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. On her island, Green Fairy worked with patience and joy. Every morning she rose with the sun. She sang softly as she watered the little flowers and planted new seeds she had collected. She cleared rocks, pulled out weeds, and shaped small paths through the meadows. With each passing day, the island looked brighter and more alive. The animals became her helpers. The squirrels carried seeds in their tiny paws. The rabbit dug small holes in the soil. The turtle guarded the seedlings by chasing away insects, though very slowly. Even the birds helped, dropping seeds from the sky. Green Fairy laughed often, her heart light. With friends and hard work, nothing is impossible. Meanwhile, on Purple Fairy's island, the days slipped by lazily. She slept late each morning, complaining that the sun was too bright. She ate fruits that grew wild, but never planted new ones. When the plants grew thorny, she simply moved deeper into her cave. Sometimes she thought, maybe I should try to do something. But then she shrugged. Why bother? A whole year is too long. The Sky King won't really care. The animals on her island did not come close. The birds stayed in the trees. The rabbits hid in their burrows, and even the butterflies avoided her. The island grew darker, tangled with weeds and vines. As the months passed, one island began to bloom like a jewel, while the other sank deeper into wildness and shadow. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, dark clouds began to gather. The wind howled through the trees, bending branches and scattering leaves. The sea grew restless, waves crashing violently against the shores of both islands. Green Fairy stood at the edge of her meadow, watching the sky turn black. "A storm is coming," she whispered. Without wasting time, she called to her animal friends. "Little Rabbit, dig holes to protect the seeds. Squirrels, gather nuts and hide them in the safest trees. Birds, fly high and warn the others." She herself tied down the shelters she had built, covered her flowers with leaves, and used stones to hold the soil in place. Rain began to fall, heavy and cold, but she kept working until everything was as safe as possible. When the storm finally struck, The wind roared like a giant beast. Trees snapped, lightning split the sky, and waves crashed onto the beaches. Green Fairy huddled with her animal friends in a sheltered cave, singing softly to calm their fear. Meanwhile, on Purple Fairy's island, things were very different. She had seen the clouds too, but instead of preparing, she groaned, "Ugh, another problem. I'll just wait it out." She curled deeper into her cave and did nothing. When the storm hit, her island suffered terribly. Trees were torn down, fruits washed away, and the cave flooded with water. Purple Fairy shrieked, scrambling to higher ground, soaked and shivering. The animals, already wary of her, did not come to help. By the time the storm passed, the difference was clear. Green Fairy's island, though battered, still bloomed with life. Her flowers bent but stood tall again. Her shelter remained, and her friends gathered around her with trust. But Purple Fairy's island was worse than ever. Mud, broken trees, and silence. The fairy sat miserably on a rock, her once bright dress covered in dirt. "Why does everything always go wrong for me?" she muttered angrily, not realizing that her own laziness had brought her here. The year passed at last. The sun shone warmly over the islands as the Sky King descended from the heavens, his robes glowing like morning light. He first stepped onto Green Fairy's island. What he saw made him smile. The once wild land was now a paradise. Flowers of every color bloomed across the meadows. Butterflies danced in the air, birds sang from the treetops, and streams sparkled as they flowed gently to the sea. The little animals gathered proudly around Green Fairy, who stood among her blossoms, her dress shining like fresh leaves. "You have done well," the Sky King said, his voice like thunder and song at once. "With patience and kindness, you have turned this barren place into a land of beauty. You shall be remembered as a guardian of life." Green Fairy bowed deeply, her heart glowing with joy. Then the Sky King turned to Purple Fairy's island. What a sad sight it was. The land was darker than ever, choked with weeds, thorny plants, and broken trees. Mud covered the ground, and the air was heavy and silent. No animals were in sight. In the middle of it all sat Purple Fairy, slumped on a rock. Her once pretty dress was torn and dirty. She looked nothing like a fairy at all. "Look at yourself," the Sky King said sternly. "Is this the work of a fairy? You were given a gift of land and time, yet you wasted it in laziness. Instead of creating beauty, you let despair and bitterness rule you." Purple Fairy lowered her head, but still muttered, "It wasn't my fault. The land was too harsh, the storm was too strong." The Sky King shook his head. "Excuses cannot hide the truth. You failed not because of the land, but because of your heart." With a wave of his hand, the Sky King lifted Green Fairy into the sky, surrounding her with light. But when he looked at Purple Fairy, his voice grew cold. "You no longer deserve the name of fairy. From this day on, you shall live among humans as one of them. Only through toil and struggle will you learn the value of effort." And with that, he left her behind, powerless, on the ruined island. From that day on, the two islands told two very different stories. Green Fairy's island became a place of wonder. Birds built nests in the trees she had planted. Children from nearby villages came by boat to play among the flowers. And travelers whispered of a magical garden that never seemed to fade. Green Fairy watched over it with joy, guiding the animals and caring for every leaf and blossom. Her name was remembered as a guardian of beauty and hope. Purple Fairy, now living as a human, felt the weight of her new life. She no longer had wings to fly or magic to command. She had to gather food, build shelter, and work the soil with her own hands. At first, she complained bitterly, but slowly, she began to understand. The first time she planted a seed and saw it grow, she felt a spark of pride. The first time she shared bread with her neighbors, she felt warmth in her heart. And though it took many years, she finally learned what the Sky King had meant. True beauty comes not from wishing or complaining, but from effort, kindness, and care. Children who heard the story asked, "Which fairy would you like to be?" And parents smiled as they answered, "Be like the green fairy. Work with joy, care for others, and you will make your own world bloom." And so, the story was passed down from one generation to the next, a reminder that even the smallest effort, done with love, can change the world.